Hello there, and welcome to the Earth Observed podcast. My name is Sam Warwick, head of geospatial staffing here at DeepRec.ai. This is a podcast where I sit down with the founders, the technical leaders, and the minds shaping the future of Earth data, geospatial technology, and atmospheric AI across Europe, North America, and beyond. In each episode, we take a vertical dive into a topic chosen by our guest, giving you a front row seat to the ideas, the tools, and the challenges that enable innovation from space to subsurface and everything in between. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by Philippe Raisin, CTO at VIDA, where he is working on future-proofing infrastructure against the risks of climate change. Thank you so much for joining us today, Philippe. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm really well. And pleasure to be here.
Yes, no, I am, VIDA holds a very special place in my heart. Having collaborated with you guys previously, across, I think it's been 2-3 years now. I'd like to say that I understand the business very well. You have some fantastic people working for you, and yeah, just really, really love what you do. So I had to get you on here for an episode for sure. I guess today we're going to be talking about climate de-risked. Before we jump into the business side of the podcast, the questions, just tell us a little bit about climate de-risked without giving too much away.
Yeah, sure. We all know it. We feel it these days, almost every week, right? There's news coming in, another kind of natural disaster strikes somewhere. I think right now it's there's floods in northern Italy right now. There's heavy typhoons happening in East Asia. So yeah, really the climate crisis is here. Climate change is here. It affects all of us in some ways. And at the same time, we also know much more than we ever have about the climate, about our planet. And it also means we are in a position to do something about it, right? Both to better understand what's happening to the planet and also to prepare and adapt to it. And so that's really the mission we have at VIDA. That's what I've spent last years working on. And that's why we also feel like it's really an opportunity as well to react to the climate crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was only yesterday evening that I saw on the news that there was there an earthquake in the Philippines? Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that happened as well. Yeah.
The more we know about it, I guess the more we can do to mitigate that risk and, as said already, future-proof the infrastructure there. So I guess let's talk about climate change. Climate change is often framed as a global crisis, but do you see any positive shifts or opportunities emerging from how the world is responding to it?
Yeah, for sure. So I do think again, first of all, it's a global phenomenon, right? Which is, but also still happens on a very local level, right? In many and thousands of different ways, right? Really depending on who you talk to, there's different hazards people look at or are being exposed to. So it is really a challenge that we're in together. That has also needs thousands and thousands of actions to mitigate. And I think that's really been happening as well, right? I think you've seen cities adapting to, say, heat stress, right? By planting more trees or greening their infrastructure. You've also seen many more early warning systems being installed, right, to forewarn people when, say, typhoons or tropical cyclones hit. And of course, on the kind of decarbonization as well, there has been a huge amount of just renewable capacity that has been built, right? So I think you do see a lot of good happening. The unfortunate thing is that also just the climate change is just also much faster than and progressing than we thought, and so it just does feel like it's always kind of like a catching up game that we're playing.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting point you've made there. It's ultimately like a race, and a race that, as you said, we're always playing catch up with. I guess though it's a marathon, and I guess we have to play these things strategically, rather than move too quickly and things don't necessarily execute in the best way. I guess for those who are new to VIDA, I'd be keen for you to share what you guys actually do, and the specific problem that you're solving in the climate risk space, because of course it's so broad.
Of course, sure. So yeah, VIDA, we're a startup. It's headquartered in Munich. I co-founded it with the CEO Tobias and Nabin and myself a few years ago. And really, what kind of brought us together is this desire to work on or kind of help build a much more resilient and better infrastructure that kind of we all need, right? And what we started out with was actually kind of addressing the problem of providing electricity to the several hundred million people who still lack access to it. So that's how we started out about 5 years ago. And over the years now, we've really become, I think, one of the leading kind of data intelligence providers in this sector. In this sector, we mostly work in countries in sub-Saharan Africa and countries in Asia as well. And we really specialize in kind of like producing building level and settlement level data that helps the governments and the kind of power companies to really build like renewable energy infrastructure to the people who need it most. So that's kind of how we started out, really in trying to fill that data gap that exists about about like knowing about these communities, population statistics, what kind of infrastructure already exists, etc. And with this, I think we've been pretty successful, and it's still a major part of the business. And now over the last few years, really, we've turned our attention ever more to the climate crises. Also because obviously climate risks are threatening the very same infrastructure that we've also helped build and plan, right? And it is really a really global problem. And also in that sector itself, again, kind of look at it from the same lens, which is through data sets. So we need to kind of just have great data sets and provide it to the people who need it most for them to understand what are the kind of different natural hazards and climate risks for the specific locations that they really care about most. So to put simply, really the climate risk product fundamentally is really all about you can drop a pin anywhere on the map. This could be, depending on who you are, right? It could be an office building you want to build, it could be a power station, a factory, it could be a community that you want to kind of help make more resilient. And essentially, the VIDA platform provides you with a full spectrum of climate hazards. So this is, again, it's flood risks, wildfire, storms, etc. And again, not just for like the current climate in the current year, but also like forward-looking, meaning over the next few decades under the those SSPs, so these different kind of socioeconomic pathways and greenhouse gas emission pathways that have been defined also by as a result of the IPCC work. So yeah, this is really that data we really want to provide to our customers, and then also kind of answer this so what questions, or like what does that really mean for the particular locations they're interested in. So this could mean we help them determine the annual expected loss, so how much loss is expected per year in this location, this kind of asset. We're also doing more quantitative assessments about which areas are particularly risky, say in a potentially large geographic area. And from there, then of course, helping them understand what can they do to adapt, right, and to mitigate these climate risks. Be that building any additional measures, or whatever it may be.
Am I correct in saying that you were previously called Village Data Analytics?
Yes, this goes all the way back actually to a ESA project from the European Space Agency. That's how we started out through a very generous grant we got to develop this energy access data kind of platform. And yeah, as it is for your listeners who've ever been in ESA project, we always have to come up with like a project name, and so that's kind of what we came up with at the time. Quite wordy, but also we did exactly what was in the name. But yeah, now that's kind of important to VIDA, which I think is also a bit easier.
Absolutely. Well, I love it. I love the transformation there from Village Data Analytics to VIDA. I suppose you've got a bit of a play on the word there, and also as well, if I understood correctly, VIDA translates to life, right?
Correct. Yeah.
In Spanish. So I'm keen to understand how VIDA is actually harnessing the latest geospatial technologies and what makes your approach stand out in the climate risk data ecosystem.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we are kind of like a downstream company in a sense that we are in a fortunate position that we can harness all the progress that's been made over the last years in this kind of geospatial stack. So it we can really benefit from these technologies in a sense that it's much easier for us to deal with these very large data sets. It's much easier and cheaper to serve them to our customers. It's much easier to catalog them. And yeah, ultimately also much easier to kind of visualize large amounts of data sets on our own on our own web applications and products. Yeah, we've been early adopters of a lot of these technologies, be this Stack, be this cloud optimized geotiffs, the SAR files, and like all these kind of like really quite recent kind of developments. We do try to kind of stay on top of it because yeah, ultimately it just means we are much faster in developing these products. And as such, obviously save a lot of time, but also save our customers a lot of headache. And often that kind of comes out in just much faster delivery times for these data sets, because maybe we'll talk a bit about that a bit later as well. Like often it's about creating or extracting climate risk data for tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of sites, which previously sometimes would take weeks or months even to kind of like do. And now using that stack, that's just much, much easier to do. We can do it with a much smaller team. And yeah, that's why we also yeah, want to be early adopters of all these technologies, and of course also give back wherever we can. So that's one. And the second bit is of course, and I think that's just the whole sector, is we're it's all fueled by these amazing kind of open data sets that are out there, right? From obviously the global climate models under CMF6, but then also the Era 5 kind of like atmospheric data sets, all the freely available satellite imagery that's out there as well, and those derived products. So that's really obviously what's fueling this whole sector, including ours. And yeah, having openly available kind of like foundational data is also extremely important to get trust. You have like trust in the industry. So that's definitely another big part of it.
Yeah, I believe I have had a few episodes recorded now where we're talking about openly available data, and I think there is nothing more important, especially when it comes to de-risking climate and future-proofing against natural disasters, than having that data available to be able to build the tools, produce the solutions that are going to be able to help society to ultimately get through that. Because Mother Nature will do its thing, right? And it will continue to do its thing, despite efforts to try and slow that down. So I'm keen to understand a bit more about maybe some of your customers, not necessarily you coming on today and revealing those, but maybe some of the categories, whether you're working with, is it on a B2B basis? Are you working with like government agencies across Southeast Asia and Africa? And I'm also keen to understand a bit more about some of the success stories where climate risk data from VIDA has actually helped organizations make better decisions or maybe unlock new opportunities.
Sure. Yeah, I think in general, what makes the sector quite exciting at the moment is that I think we are living through a period where, yeah, the kind of climate risk data is really being kind of fed into a whole set of different sectors. And yeah, there's also a pretty big ecosystem, right, of companies and actors who are trying to do this. So that's also kind of reflected in the kind of customers that we do have, right? So of course there's really on the government side, that's a pretty big customer group also that we have, which is often working together with, let's say, large engineering firms, are really trying to understand what is their kind of like climate risk exposure as a whole, be it say their power sector or other kind of like their populations, etc. So that's definitely a big customer group. Then yeah, we talk and work quite a bit also just with investors, so people who finance infrastructure. There's one also recent success story that stands out, where we've been working with a investor into quite large scale solar power projects, and they essentially need to, as part of their due diligence process, look at the climate risk in each individual location, even before the asset or the kind of power plant is actually built. And through using the VIDA platform, they've just been able to massively speed up this process of like gathering the data and kind of getting the right numbers, right, that they can put into their essentially investment proposal in VIDA.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely been
I like the fact that your platform kind of orbits the entire life cycle of a particular project. The fact that you can utilize your platform for due diligence, it can be also utilized, from a historic perspective, but also you can look at things to kind of future proof that, and how that could appeal to so many different customers in different fields, but at different stages of their own project life cycle there. So yeah, I think that's really cool. But of course, with success stories comes challenges and barriers, times of hardship, and times where you're really scratching your head, thinking, why can't we solve this, or why isn't this working? It happens to the best of us, right? So I'm keen to understand a bit more about some of the biggest barriers to making climate risk data widely accessible and actionable, and how VIDA is actually working to overcome some of these barriers.
sure. Yeah, one big challenge really lies in the nature of the data that we have, that we're dealing with, and the nature of the problem, right? Which is to kind of give people a better understanding of like what will happen to this particular place in the future, right? Is there an increased risk of heat waves or storms or whatever? And also doing this at a very local scale, right? So a main challenge is that a lot of the global climate models were developed right for scientific purposes to just better understand our atmosphere, and then later on also to inform policy, right? To react to the climate crises. And now we kind of trying to take this and essentially to an extreme to kind of really say, okay, what about an individual asset, an individual building, right? What is going to happen in this place? And so I think there's the problem really of sometimes trying to kind of get good insights or meaningful insights from what are sometimes really global, quite coarse models. And of course, there's all sorts of ways to downscale, to kind of like increase the resolution. But we must obviously never forget that these are not predictions of like what's going to happen, but these are like kind of projections of like what do the state of the art models say about like what the future may hold for this place. So that's in the nature of trying to learn more about about the climate in say the year 2030 or 50 and beyond, right? So these are just very tough problems. Some things are also just you can't know them because that lies in just the complexity of the problem. And I think trying to still give accurate or good insights that are also scientifically kind of valid and statistically robust to the customers, but then also designing the product in a way that it's understandable for the clients, I think is really a key challenge that we're spending a lot of time on. So this is about obviously great UI that you need, good explanations about like what the data means, how it should be used, evidence spans, all of these kind of things. And this is, I think, is really a sector-wide challenge when it comes to climate risk, because contrary to say weather prediction, where you can check tomorrow whether your prediction is accurate, with climate there's really no such thing, right? Other than actually waiting until the year 2030. So yeah, there's always that kind of challenge um, explaining what the data can tell you and how it should be used, and also what the limitations of it are.
I actually had a previous guest on talking about why UX and UI is the missing link in geospatial data. And I know that when hiring for you guys and scaling your teams there, I think one really appealing part of your platform is making your platform intuitive for stakeholders, both technical and non-technical, to be able to make those complex decisions, make informed decisions on what they need to do next. And I think I'm going to come on to AI in a moment, but this idea of artificial intelligence, of innovation and technology seems so overwhelming. Sometimes all people want is a very, very simple interface and experience to ultimately feel like they're in control of the decisions that they are making, rather than making it complicated for that. So speaking of AI, we're not going to avoid it. It seems to be on pretty much everyone's mind at this moment in time. I'm keen to understand where you see the biggest opportunities for AI to, how can I put this, advance climate risk modeling, and I guess what role the business VIDA will be playing in that.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, we're definitely, definitely see a huge opportunity there. And also, yeah, are thinking a lot about a lot about this. So there's definitely on the modeling side, I think where there's a lot of excitement at the moment, right, is to try to, have AI models kind of like emulate or help kind of with often shorter term like weather forecasting, which I think is super exciting. Where there's AI models that are much also less computationally intense at inference to kind of like predict future weather, and in some cases also just beating some of the established benchmarks. So I think that's really exciting, and of course also always kind of trying to eke out a few more days of kind of forecasting skill, I think will just be tremendously important for anyone who kind of needs very accurate and short term kind of like insights. From our side, actually, what is interesting, and I think that's something we were also working on, is to try to have much more kind of like better seasonal and kind of like still short term climate forecasts. Because while you have like the 2030, 2050 outlook, what we also find customers are very interested in is trying to understand better like what's ahead the next year, right? Are we going to face an intense, season with heat waves, for example, right? Such that they can kind of pull that into their operational planning. So I think that's also something where I could foresee that some of the AI models could really help with that to bring this also just into production much faster. That's one thing, and then on the other side, of course, just agentic use cases are definitely on our mind, where you can think about kind of having much more like a climate risk analyst kind of as a service, which I think is super exciting, where an agent would have access to kind of like the trusted climate risk data, right, that comes out of an engine such as our own, and then you can still kind of be much faster to produce, say, the reports or the outputs that you need. But equally, you could also kind of enrich its analysis with some of the information that may be available inside of the company. It would be in that kind of contextual information about a certain place in terms of what's already built there, what is some of the more confidential data about a timeline of available, and also having the agent help you try to figure out what good adaptation strategies maybe to kind of de-risk a particular asset, and just kind of making this much more, much faster, much more seamless, and helping you ultimately to interpret that climate data, and also helping you to understand the limitations potentially of that data. So I think that there's an opportunity for really an all new interface of like how we work with climate risk data, and I think that that's super exciting. Definitely something we are also working on.
Awesome. No, that's great. That really is really cool. So I guess forward guidance then, looking ahead, how do you see climate risk data evolving over the next decade? And once again, bringing it back to VIDA, because this is what the episode is about today. I'm keen to understand how VIDA is going to be participating in that involvement.
Yeah, sure. No, we definitely have as a vision really to kind of be really playing a major role in making sure that all the infrastructure we already do have and all the infrastructure we have to build to kind of as societies, that those are really kind of future proof, and that those are kind of climate change proof essentially. So we are definitely we definitely see ourselves part of give or kind of our role as really making sure that we give the best data that's out there to all these different users who need that. And the data sets are the models keep getting better, so there's a lot of work to be done there to just kind of get better, more trusted, potentially also like more short-term data into our clients' hands, and also just making this just seamless and just like seamlessly integrating it also into the systems that our users already have. And I think that's I think sometimes not one of the more overlooked challenges as well, right? It's not just kind of having the best kind of climate hazard data in the first place, but then it's also about, okay, there's operational systems. How do you really fit them into into those systems, such that like the kind of the data becomes just one other kind of like input data stream in what is, or hopefully also more automated decision making processes. And right now, a lot of the work is still fairly manual, right? It's still, a lot of it is around, okay, here's a report, kind of this is your climate risk report, say, for a particular site. And I think what's missing there, and I think where there's an opportunity, is really to to make this a much more real time and a much more like an ongoing automated way, or kind of like an automated product, right? Which, yes, it gives you kind of the climate risk for the future, but then also more shorter term gives you insights about the next few seasons ahead, potentially. So this is kind of really where we're what we see what's going to happen. And as you mentioned before, like whether but we don't like it, but like the climate change is moving on, and we also expect that every year we'll see more and more of that. So the need and the urgency, it's only going to get bigger, in my view, and that also means that we'll have to stay stay on top of it and build these products as quickly as we can.
Yeah, this is strange, right? Because with being a recruiter, working with a particular client, you want to work with that client in order to ultimately make yourself redundant. You want to get them to a point where they don't necessarily need you anymore. You want to get them to a point where you've implemented certain processes or advised them on certain methodologies or ways in which they can enhance their growth strategy, to a point where, once again, we ultimately neglect ourselves. And I guess the same is somewhat with companies like VIDA, in that at some point you would hope that climate change has somewhat reversed itself to an extent where your solutions aren't necessarily needed. But I feel like that's maybe wishful thinking. And the appetite, regretfully, I say, is only going to get stronger for solutions such as yourselves. So it's it's a twofold situation there, and I'm truly excited to see where VIDA is going to go over the next few years. I've been rooting for you from the sides for the past few years now. As I said at the start, you've got some incredible employees over there. Your team is amazing. And I would say that anyone watching today, if you're keen to learn a bit more about VIDA, I'd say reach out to Philip, reach out to Tobias. Feel free to reach out about to myself. I'd be happy to shed what light I can on the company there. Philip, any final words?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit here, and thanks again so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about our work today.
Absolutely. No, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on for today's episode of Earth Observed. A really, really fascinating conversation there, and lots to digest. Well, look, thank you all, if you have got to this point, for watching. Until next time, take care. Hello, and thank you for watching today's episode of Earth Observed, powered by DeepRec.ai. If you're interested in joining me for an episode of your own to discuss a topic of your choice, do get in contact with me. And of course, if you are looking to scale your team within geospatial, Earth data, or atmospheric AI, please do get in contact. I'd love to understand how I can support you. Until next time, have a great day.